Hello, and welcome to another video. I've sort of wanted to talk about this before. In this video, I want to further explore something that I brought up. If you haven't seen the original, I will put that video in the description. Anyway, getting into it, the main problem for casual players getting into PvP is gear and the stats you get for most of it. Well, gearing is made easier now, which I will do a quick little video explaining how to gear as fast as possible. It isn't until you get full PvP gear with augments that you truly are on an even playing field as most people in PvP at the moment. Now, this isn't a hardcore versus casual thing. This is more of a new or returning player thing. If you find yourself in a position, I'm sorry, it's definitely a slog. So getting into the main thing, here is my stats, then I'll also show you my stats outside of a war zone. For example, Rishi Stronghold is the same as Warzone in terms of stats. The bolster for both places are the same and are immediately applied upon arrival. If your gear score is about 300 or above, bolster barely affects your total stats, and it's kind of intended to be that way, sadly, including bolster will not bolster you for augments, so if you don't have augments, at the moment, you're losing on well over a few thousand stats, as over the expansions, augments in gear have gotten increasingly powerful. For example, you're missing 2,394 endurance and power if you're using the best augments available, and 1820 secondary stat. That's quite a lot to be missing out on. If you're using purple augments, which are less stats, you're still missing close to these same numbers and stats. As a new or returning player, this is going to be a pain, as it will burn credits like no tomorrow. Along with that, you can't afford to augment every single piece of gear and upgrade you go through. So this is just terrible. Unless you don't mind spending all your money, which, you know, some people do have money to spend. This isn't very forgiving, nor is it friendly casual, or casual friendly? There we go. Alright, my bad. Well, it doesn't have to be. Most casual players won't even bother with logging until they finish the gear. So they're just going to play at this disadvantage every single game until they basically get gear. That's not good. And if bolster would bolster for augments, that'd be great, but I do think there's currently an issue with that. And I'm sure they'll probably fix it in the future. But do keep in mind that PvP is going to feel terrible until you're actually ogged, and on top of that, you know, have better than just conquest gear. Not to mention the terrible stat allocations on nearly every single gear piece except for PvP and Operation Purples. This means you end up in a situation with 30% or even worse critical rate, which will really gimp your overall damage output. Again, with your mastery and power already being so low, even if you do manage to land a critical, it won't be for that much either. This is why, for any of you ungeared, still feel like you're hitting like a wet noodle, or I guess feel like you're hitting like a wet noodle. Most people will say gear isn't needed that badly, or gear doesn't matter that much. In a way, they're not wrong, but also when you're mostly there, it doesn't, and I will agree with them. But when you're not even close and you're unogged, yeah, it matters a lot. This is sort of the first time we don't really have a decent bolster to fall back onto if our gear is terrible. So we're seeing the effects of terrible gear for once, basically. Before, we've had really good bolsters in the past, so it's not very noticeable. Now, to get into why gear, or I guess why my gear is sort of mixed match, I won't go too far into topic, but I will link a thread where I explain it the best that I can, including a min-maxing video where I show you what and how it's done. For most players, that's not helpful, but what is helpful is knowing the disadvantage that you're actually at. So you can look at my stats and compare them to yours. I am a min-max non-PvEer because that matters, as PvEers have a better min-max available to them. I have every datacron that gives combat stats. I have all my buffs, gold augments, and I am stim. If there's over a few thousand points of a gap, you're more than likely being gimped, my bad, and won't be an even playing field with most players in PvP unless they are also undergeared themselves. Nonetheless, I hope this helps. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away. I play all the specs in the game. Don't really heal, so when it comes to PvP stats or simple game things, I'm happy to help. And yes, there is a 340 min-max that you do, or a certain something. That certain something they're more than aware of, so I'm hoping that gets fixed soon. So just for you guys that do see that outlier, won't see it too often, it's most likely probably going to be fixed soon, so just keep that as a side note. Other than that, I hope this sheds some light on something rather important that most are brushing off or without thinking much about it. A lot of these players that you actually get into a match with have about 7,000 power, maybe 8,000 power, and only like 10, 11,000 mastery. That's terrible. Last expansion we had more than that. So don't be too quick to assume that gear doesn't matter. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. It means a lot. I do post a lot of SWTOR PvP and guides, though sometimes I post other games like New World.